The photo fell out of Naomi's purse like a confession she never meant to make. I stood there in our marble-floored kitchen, holding evidence of my wife's betrayal in my hands, while she showered upstairs, probably washing off the scent of my own brother. The image showed them tangled together on Egyptian cotton sheets at the Ritz-Carlton in Aspen, a trip she'd claimed was a solo wellness retreat for her travel blog. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Grant Holloway, and I'm an architect. I build things that last. Apparently, my marriage wasn't one of them. Dad, are you okay? Ivy's voice startled me. My 10-year-old daughter stood in the doorway, her dark eyes, so much like mine, filled with concern that no kid should have to feel. Just tired, sweetheart. I slipped the photo into my jacket pocket, forcing a smile. How was school? Weird. Mom picked me up early again. She was crying in the car and kept texting Uncle Trevor. Ivy's innocent observation hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. She said you've been working too much and don't love us anymore. The water shut off upstairs. Naomi would be down soon, ready to play the perfect wife while planning her next rendezvous with Trevor. My brother, the adventure tourism guide who'd never built anything more permanent than a campfire. That's not true, Ivy. I love you more than all the buildings in Denver. I knelt down to her level. Want to help me with something? I'm working on a special project. What kind of project? The kind that makes sure the right people get what they deserve. Naomi appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in her silk robe, blonde hair perfectly tousled. Even now, even knowing what I knew, she was stunning. That's how she'd gotten away with it for so long. Grant, honey, we need to talk about Christmas dinner. Trevor's coming, and I thought we could invite some friends. Actually, I've already sent the invitations. I stood up, keeping my voice level. It's going to be quite the celebration. Something flickered in her green eyes. Fear? Guilt? What do you mean? Just that it'll be memorable. Very memorable. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of careful planning. I'd always been methodical. It's what made me a successful architect. You don't design a 40-story building without considering every beam, every joint, every potential point of failure. Marriages, I was learning, followed similar principles. My assistant Marlene proved invaluable. She'd worked for me for 8 years and had always suspected something was off about Naomi's frequent business trips. I found the hotel receipts, she said, sliding a manila folder across my desk. The Ritz in Aspen, the Four Seasons in Vail, that boutique place in Telluride, all charged to your joint account, all during times when Naomi claimed to be on solo retreats. And Trevor's credit cards? Adventure tourism doesn't pay that well. He's been using the company card for personal expenses, dinners, gifts, even lingerie from that expensive boutique downtown. Marlene's expression was grim. There's enough here to destroy both of them financially. I studied the evidence spread across my mahogany desk. Bank statements, hotel receipts, text message records obtained through perfectly legal means. Naomi had used our family phone plan, after all. The picture was clear. My wife and brother had been conducting their affair on my dime for over a year. What's the plan, Grant? Christmas dinner. Public humiliation works best with an audience. That evening, I came home to find Naomi in the kitchen with her best friend Lila, both of them huddled over their phones like teenagers sharing secrets. They fell silent when I walked in. Ladies? I nodded politely, opening the refrigerator. Planning something special? Just girl talk, Lila said quickly. She was a wannabe influencer who lived vicariously through Naomi's modest social media success. Nothing that would interest you. Oh, I'm interested in everything these days. I pulled out a beer, noting how Naomi's hands shook as she reached for her wine glass. Especially travel recommendations. Naomi's been to some amazing places lately. The wellness retreats have been so rejuvenating, Naomi said, not meeting my eyes. Very private. Very intimate. I bet they were. Lila's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and giggled. Trevor says hi. He's excited about Christmas dinner. So am I said, taking a long sip of my beer. So am I. December 24th arrived with a vengeance. Denver was buried under 2 feet of snow, but our house glowed with warm light and the smell of Naomi's overpriced catering. She'd gone all out, probably her last hurrah as a married woman, though she didn't know it yet. The guest list was perfect. Trevor, of course, looking uncomfortable in his too tight sport coat. Lila and her husband Rick, both already halfway through a bottle of champagne. Detective Ruiz from the Denver PD, an old friend from college who owed me a favor. Marlene and her husband, and a few other carefully selected witnesses. Grant, this is wonderful, Trevor said, clapping me on the back with false brotherly affection. Just like old times. Better, I replied. Much better. Ivy sat between Naomi and me at the dinner table, chattering about school while the adults made stilted conversation. I watched Trevor and Naomi carefully, the stolen glances, the way she blushed when he complimented the food, how his hand lingered on hers when passing the wine. After dessert, as everyone relaxed with drinks in the living room, I stood up. I'd like to make a toast, I announced, raising my glass. The room fell quiet. To family, to loyalty, to the people who stand by you when times get tough. Here, Rick slurred, already drunk. And to new beginnings, I continued, reaching into my jacket pocket. Because sometimes you discover that the people closest to you aren't who you thought they were. I pulled out the first photo, the one from Naomi's purse. I set it on the coffee table where everyone could see it. The silence was deafening. Naomi's wine glass shattered against the hardwood floor. Grant, I can explain, she started, but I held up my hand. No need. I have plenty of explanation right here. I pulled out more photos, spreading them across the coffee table like a twisted holiday display. The Ritz-Carlton, November 15th, the Four Seasons, October 3rd, that charming bed and breakfast in Telluride, September 20th. Trevor had gone pale, his usual cocky demeanor evaporating. Look, Grant, this isn't what it looks like. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Really? Because it looks like my wife and my brother have been screwing each other senseless for over a year, using my money to pay for their romantic getaways. Ivy looked confused, glancing between the adults. Marlene gently took her hand and led her to the kitchen, closing the door behind them. How did you... Naomi whispered. I'm an architect, sweetheart. I notice when foundations start to crack. I pulled out another folder. Bank statements showing joint account withdrawals, credit card receipts for lingerie that never made it into our bedroom, text messages between you two discussing how stupid and boring I am. Detective Ruiz leaned forward, studying the evidence with professional interest. This is quite comprehensive, Grant. I'm thorough. I turned back to Naomi and Trevor. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The late-night phone calls, the sudden interest in wellness retreats, the way you two couldn't keep your hands off each other at family gatherings? Lila shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should go... Oh no, Lila, you're part of this too. I pulled out printed screenshots of text messages. Your messages to Naomi about covering for her, helping her create alibis, even taking photos of her and Trevor together for their private collection. Rick stared at his wife in shock. Lila, what the hell? I was just being a good friend, she protested. You were being an accomplice to adultery, Detective Ruiz said dryly, and potentially fraud given the financial component. Trevor finally found his voice. Grant, we never meant for this to happen. It just... Just what? Just slipped? Like you just slipped into her bed? Just slipped into my bank account? I stood up, my carefully controlled anger finally starting to show. You're my brother, Trevor. My brother. I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry? I laughed again, the sound echoing off our vaulted ceilings. You're sorry? Do you have any idea what you've destroyed? Not just my marriage that was already broken, apparently, but my daughter's sense of security, her trust in family, her belief that the adults in her life aren't complete pieces of garbage. Naomi was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Grant, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We? I shook my head. There is no we anymore, Naomi. There hasn't been for a long time, has there? I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick legal document. Divorce papers, already filed. I'm asking for full custody of Ivy, complete division of assets, and reimbursement for all funds you've stolen from our joint accounts. You can't do this, she shrieked, her composure completely gone now. I won't let you take my daughter. Your daughter? My voice dropped to a whisper, which somehow seemed more threatening than shouting. When was the last time you helped her with homework? Attended a parent-teacher conference? Took her to a doctor's appointment? You've been too busy playing house with my brother to be a mother. Trevor stood up, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so perfect? You think your boring, predictable life is what she wanted? She needed passion, excitement. She needed loyalty. She needed honesty. She needed a husband who didn't work 60-hour weeks to pay for her lifestyle while she screwed his brother. I stepped closer to Trevor, my hands clenched into fists. But you're right about one thing. I am boring. I'm predictable. I'm the guy who pays the bills and fixes the problems and never gets the credit. But you know what else I am? What? Trevor sneered. I'm the guy who plans ahead. I pulled out my phone and opened an email app. Naomi, you might want to check your messages, specifically the ones from your sponsors. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. With trembling fingers, she opened her email. Her face went white. No. No. What is it? Lila asked. They're canceling my contracts. All of them. The hotel chain, the travel gear company, the wellness brand. They're all pulling out. Naomi looked up at me with horror. How? Morality clauses, I said simply. Amazing how many companies don't want to be associated with adultery and fraud. I sent them all the evidence this morning, along with a detailed timeline of your activities. Trevor's phone started buzzing too. His adventure tourism company had strict policies about using company resources for personal activities. The evidence I'd compiled would end his career. You bastard! He snarled, lunging toward me. I sidestepped easily, letting him crash into the Christmas tree. Ornaments scattered across the floor, and the tree toppled over, lights blinking frantically. Careful, Trevor. Detective Ruiz is watching, and assault charges would just make things worse for you. Ruiz nodded. I'd listen to him if I were you. Naomi was scrolling through her phone, watching her carefully cultivated online life crumble in real time. Grant, please. We can fix this. I'll end things with Trevor. We can start over. No. The word came out flat and final. We can't. Because this isn't about closeness, Naomi. This isn't about passion or excitement or whatever justification you've been telling yourself. This is about character. And you don't have any. I looked around the room at the wreckage of my former life, the broken glass, the fallen tree, the shocked faces of people I'd once considered friends. Only Detective Ruiz and Marlene seemed unsurprised by the evening's revelations. I want all of you out of my house, I said quietly. Now. Grant, Naomi started. Now. They left in a flurry of coats and accusations and threats of legal action. Only Lila paused at the door, her face streaked with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never thought. Yes, you did, I replied. You thought about it every time you helped her lie, every time you covered for her, every time you chose her secrets over my daughter's well-being. You all thought about it. After they were gone, I found Ivy in the kitchen with Marlene, playing a card game and pretending she hadn't heard everything. Is Mom coming back tonight? she asked without looking up from her cards. No, sweetheart. She's going to stay somewhere else for a while. Good, Ivy said quietly. She's been lying a lot lately. I don't like liars. Neither do I, baby. Neither do I. The next morning brought a fresh snowfall and a series of increasingly frantic phone calls from Naomi. I let them all go to voicemail, while Ivy and I made pancakes and planned our day. Can we go see a movie? She asked, drowning her breakfast in syrup. Absolutely, but first, Daddy has some business to take care of. The business involved meeting with my lawyer, Thomas Chen, a sharp-dressed Harvard graduate who specialized in high-conflict divorces. His office overlooked downtown Denver, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. This is impressive work, Grant, he said, reviewing the evidence I'd compiled. Thorough, well-documented, and completely legal. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. What about custody? With this level of documented deception and financial irresponsibility, plus her complete absence from parenting duties, you'll get primary custody, no question. She might get supervised visitation if she's lucky. And the money? Every penny she spent on the affair can be recovered. Hotels, restaurants, gifts, it's all marital property used for extramarital purposes. The court will order full reimbursement. I felt a grim satisfaction. How long will this take? With her financial situation collapsing and no real defense, she'll probably want to settle quickly. 6 months, maybe less. That afternoon, while Ivy was at a friend's house, I drove to Trevor's apartment complex. His Porsche was parked in its usual spot, looking smug and expensive. I'd always hated that car, a midlife crisis on wheels that he couldn't really afford. I didn't key it or slash the tires. That would be criminal damage. Instead, I called a towing company and reported an abandoned vehicle blocking a fire lane. Completely legal, since Trevor had parked 3 inches over the line. Then I went to his gym. Trevor worked part-time as a climbing instructor at an upscale adventure fitness center, the kind of place where wealthy housewives went to feel adventurous without actually risking anything. Perfect for his lifestyle. I found him in the climbing area, showing off for a group of middle-aged women who giggled at his every word. He didn't see me until I was standing right behind him. Grant! His face went through several expressions: surprise, guilt, anger, and finally forced bravado. What are you doing here? Thought we should talk, brother to brother. The women sensed the tension and drifted away, leaving us alone near the climbing wall. Look, about last night, I held up my hand. I don't want apologies, Trevor. I want answers. How long? How long what? How long have you been planning this? Because I don't think this was some spontaneous affair. I think you saw my successful practice, my beautiful house, my perfect life, and you decided you wanted a piece of it. Trevor's jaw tightened. You always thought you were better than me. The successful brother, the responsible one. Well, guess what? Your wife preferred the fun brother. My wife preferred free vacations and expensive gifts. You were just the delivery method. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot. This is from Naomi's private Instagram account, the one she thought I didn't know about. Look at the caption on this photo from Aspen. Trevor's face went white as he read, "Finally found someone who appreciates the finer things in life, unlike some people I know. Upgrade, complete, new beginnings." She was using you, Trevor, just like she used me. The difference is, I was paying for it honestly. You're lying. Am I? Check your phone. I bet you've got some interesting messages waiting. He pulled out his phone, and I watched his expression crumble as he read. Naomi, in full panic mode after losing her sponsorships, was already distancing herself from him, blaming him for ruining her life, calling him a mistake, begging him not to contact her anymore. She's scared, he said weakly. She doesn't mean it. She means every word. You were her escape plan, Trevor. Her way out of a boring marriage into something more exciting. But now that the money's gone and the consequences are real, she's cutting you loose. I leaned closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. You destroyed my marriage for a woman who's already thrown you away. How does that feel? Trevor's face contorted with rage and humiliation. You smug bastard. You think you've won? This isn't over. Yes, it is. I straightened up, adjusting my jacket. Oh, and you might want to call a cab. Your car's been towed. I left him standing there, surrounded by climbing ropes and artificial rocks, looking smaller and more pathetic than I'd ever seen him. That evening, Naomi showed up at my house. I watched her through the security camera I'd had installed that morning, one of several new safety measures. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a wrinkled sweater instead of her usual designer outfits. The confident, glamorous woman who'd been living a double life had been replaced by someone desperate and defeated. I didn't answer the door. She rang the bell again, then started knocking. Grant, I know you're in there. We need to talk. Ivy looked up from her homework. Should we let Mom in? Not tonight, sweetheart. She needs to think about what she's done. Naomi's voice rose to a shout. This is my house too. You can't keep me out. Actually, I could. The restraining order I'd filed that morning was very specific about her not being allowed on the property without supervision. After 20 minutes, she gave up and left. But not before I got some excellent security footage of her trying to peek through windows and attempting to jimmy the back door lock. My phone rang an hour later. Detective Ruiz. Grant, I just got a call from Naomi. She's claiming you've locked her out of her own house and stolen her daughter. Did you tell her about the restraining order? I did. She seemed surprised. Apparently, she didn't read the legal papers you served her very carefully. That sounds like Naomi, always assuming the details would work themselves out. She also mentioned that you've been harassing Trevor. Have I? That's interesting. What did she consider harassment? Something about his car being towed and you confronting him at work. His car was illegally parked. I have photos, and our conversation was brief and civil. Also recorded, if anyone's interested. Ruiz chuckled. You're really not leaving anything to chance, are you? I'm an architect, detective. I believe in solid foundations and careful planning. Well, your foundation seems pretty solid. Theirs is crumbling fast. He was right. Over the next few days, I watched their lives fall apart with the methodical precision of a controlled demolition. Trevor lost his job at the Adventure Center after his boss reviewed the company credit card statements. Naomi's remaining social media followers began abandoning her as word of the affair spread through Denver's tight-knit social scene. Lila, desperate to save her own reputation, started posting about toxic friendships and learning to trust your instincts about people. But they weren't going down without a fight. The first sign of their counterattack came on New Year's Eve. Ivy and I were having a quiet celebration at home, pizza, movies, and sparkling cider, when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Someone had created a fake social media account using my name and photo, posting inflammatory political rants and inappropriate comments on local business pages. Within hours, my professional reputation was under assault. Daddy, why are people saying mean things about you online? Ivy asked, looking over my shoulder at my laptop screen. Because some people fight dirty when they're losing, sweetheart. I spent the evening documenting everything, taking screenshots and filing reports with the social media platforms. By midnight, I'd traced the account back to an IP address registered to Lila's apartment. Mistake number 1. The next morning brought a visit from Child Protective Services. A concerned citizen had reported that I was keeping my daughter in an unsafe environment and showing signs of mental instability. The caseworker, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Williams, seemed skeptical from the moment she walked into our immaculate house. I have to ask, she said, after completing her inspection. Do you have any idea who might have made this report? I have some suspicions, I replied, handing her a folder. This is documentation of an ongoing divorce proceeding. My wife and her accomplices have been escalating their harassment since I filed papers. Patricia reviewed the evidence with growing amazement. This is quite a situation, Mr. Holloway. For what it's worth, your daughter seems happy and well cared for, and your home environment is excellent. I'll be recommending that this case be closed immediately. Thank you. And if you receive any more reports about me, you might want to cross-reference them with this list of people who have financial motivations to cause me problems. Mistake number 2. That afternoon, Trevor showed up at Ivy's school, claiming to be picking her up for a family emergency. Fortunately, I'd already updated the school's records to specify exactly who was authorized to collect my daughter. The principal called me immediately. Mr. Holloway, we have your brother here insisting that he needs to take Ivy. He seems quite agitated. Don't let him anywhere near her. I'll be right there. I arrived to find Trevor arguing with the school security guard, his voice loud enough to disturb classes. Several parents were staring, and someone was recording with their phone. Trevor, I said calmly, walking up behind him. What are you doing here? He spun around, his face red with anger and embarrassment. I'm trying to see my niece. I have rights. Actually, you don't. Not anymore. I showed him the restraining order that now included him as well as Naomi. You're not allowed within 500 feet of my daughter or her school. This is insane, Grant. She's family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie and cheat and try to destroy each other's lives. I nodded to the security guard. Please call the police. Mr. Holloway is violating a court order. Trevor's bravado crumbled as he realized how public his humiliation was becoming. Parents were openly staring now, and at least 3 people were filming with their phones. This isn't over, he hissed as he backed away. Yes, it is, I replied. You just made it a criminal matter. Mistake number 3. That evening, I got a call from my biggest client, a developer who'd hired my firm to design a luxury resort in Vail. Someone had contacted him with concerns about my mental state and professional competence. Grant, I've known you for 5 years, he said. Your work is impeccable, and you've never given me any reason to doubt your professionalism. But I have to ask, is there something going on I should know about? I gave him a condensed version of the situation, focusing on the documented harassment campaign against me. Jesus, he said when I finished. Your own wife and brother? That's brutal. It's been challenging, but I want to assure you that it won't affect my work. In fact, I've been more focused than ever. I believe you. And Grant, if you need character references for your divorce proceedings, I'm happy to help. Thank you. That means more than you know. But their biggest mistake was still to come. On January 15th, Naomi made one last, desperate play. She showed up at Ivy's school again, this time with a photographer in tow, claiming she was doing a story about fathers who alienate children from their mothers. The photographer started taking pictures of the school, the other children, and the staff without permission. The principal immediately called the police and me. I arrived to find Naomi in the school parking lot, crying dramatically for the camera while claiming I'd stolen her daughter and destroyed her life. This is harassment, I told the responding officer. She's violating the restraining order and exploiting my daughter for social media content. The officer reviewed the court documents and nodded. Ma'am, you need to leave immediately. And you, he said to the photographer, need to delete any photos you took of minors without parental consent. This is a public story, Naomi protested. People need to know what kind of man he really is. The kind who documents everything, I said, pulling out my phone, including this conversation. The officer arrested Naomi for violating the restraining order. The photographer, realizing he'd been hired to participate in harassment, quickly deleted his photos and left. But the best part came that evening, when I discovered that Lila had posted the entire plan on social media beforehand, not realizing her privacy settings were wrong. Screenshots of her messages about taking Grant down and getting the truth out there, were already spreading through our social circle. Final mistake. By the end of January, their amateur harassment campaign had accomplished exactly the opposite of what they'd intended. Instead of making me look unstable and vindictive, they demonstrated their own desperation and poor judgment. Every failed attack had been documented, every lie exposed, every scheme backfired. My lawyer was practically gleeful. "Grant, they've handed us everything we need for a slam-dunk divorce settlement. Harassment, violation of court orders, attempted child endangerment. Naomi's going to be lucky to get supervised visitation." "What about the financial settlement?" "Full reimbursement for the affair expenses, plus damages for the harassment campaign. She'll probably have to declare bankruptcy." "And Trevor?" "Criminal charges for the school incident and violating the restraining order. His adventure tourism career is over." I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. "When will this be over?" I asked. "Soon. Her lawyer is already talking about settlement. She can't afford to fight anymore." But I was wrong about it being over. They had one more card to play, and it was the most dangerous one yet. February brought an unexpected thaw to Denver, melting the snow and revealing all the debris that had been hidden underneath. It seemed like an appropriate metaphor for my life. Ivy was thriving. Her grades had improved, she was sleeping better, and she'd started talking about the future with an optimism that broke my heart. She deserved so much better than the chaos her mother had created. "Dad, can we get a dog?" she asked one morning over breakfast. "Maybe." "Why?" "I want something that won't lie to me or leave." The simplicity of her request hit me like a physical blow. At 10 years old, my daughter had already learned that the adults in her life couldn't be trusted. "We'll look into it this weekend," I promised. That afternoon, Marlene buzzed me at the office. "Grant, you have visitors, Naomi and someone who says he's her lawyer." I checked the security monitor. Naomi looked even worse than the last time I'd seen her. Thinner, older, with the desperate edge of someone who'd run out of options. The man with her wore an expensive suit, but had the predatory look of an attorney who specialized in last-ditch efforts. "Send them in." Naomi's lawyer introduced himself as Richard Blackwood, which sounded like a name he'd invented to sound intimidating. He immediately launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech about mutual cooperation and protecting the child's interests. "Mr. Holloway, my client is prepared to offer a very reasonable settlement. She's willing to accept limited custody in exchange for a fair division of assets and a commitment to stop the harassment campaign against her." I almost laughed. Harassment campaign? The systematic destruction of her reputation and career, the financial pressure, the isolation from her daughter. "You mean the natural consequences of adultery and fraud?" Naomi finally spoke up, her voice shaky but determined. "Grant, I know I made mistakes, but Ivy needs her mother. You can't just erase me from her life." "I'm not erasing you, Naomi. You erased yourself. Every lie, every betrayal, every choice you made put distance between you and our daughter." "She's my daughter, too." "Then why did you spend more time with my brother than with her? Why did you miss her school plays and parent-teacher conferences to go on romantic getaways? Why did you teach her that marriage vows are meaningless and family loyalty is optional?" Blackwood held up his hand. "Mr. Holloway, we're not here to relitigate the past. We're here to discuss the future. The future was decided when your client chose to commit adultery with my brother using marital funds. Everything that's happened since then has been the logical consequence of that choice. My client is prepared to go public with her story," Blackwood said, his tone shifting to something more threatening. "The media loves a story about powerful men who destroy their wives' lives out of spite. Go ahead." I leaned back in my chair. "I have documentation of everything. Bank records, hotel receipts, text messages, security footage of your client violating restraining orders and attempting to exploit our daughter for social media content. Please, by all means, make this public. Naomi's composure finally cracked completely. You bastard! You self-righteous, controlling bastard! You think you're so perfect, but you drove me away. You're boring, predictable, emotionally distant. Stop! My voice cut through her rant like a blade. Just stop. You want to blame me for your choices? Fine, but don't do it in front of our daughter. Ivy's not here, Blackwood said. Isn't she? I pressed a button on my desk intercom. Ivy, sweetheart, you can come out now. The door to my private bathroom opened, and Ivy stepped out. She'd been hiding there since before Naomi and her lawyer arrived, my insurance policy against exactly this kind of scene. Hi, Mom, Ivy said quietly. Naomi's face went white. Ivy, honey, I didn't know you were… I heard everything, Ivy said. About how Dad is boring and distant and drove you away. Is that why you were kissing Uncle Trevor at Christmas? Because Dad was boring? The silence in the room was deafening. Ivy, it's complicated. Naomi started. No, it's not. Ivy's voice was steady, far too mature for her age. You chose Uncle Trevor over Dad and me. You chose to lie and sneak around and hurt people. That's not complicated. That's just mean. Blackwood looked like he wanted to disappear. This wasn't going according to whatever plan they'd hatched. Ivy, your mother loves you very much, he said weakly. If she loved me, she wouldn't have tried to use me for pictures to make Dad look bad. If she loved me, she wouldn't have missed my birthday party because she was with Uncle Trevor. If she loved me, she would have told the truth instead of making me keep secrets. Naomi was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration and self-pity. This is parental alienation, she sobbed. You're turning her against me. I didn't have to turn her against anything, I said quietly. She was there, Naomi. She saw it all. The lies, the sneaking around, the way you treated our family like an inconvenience. She drew her own conclusions. Ivy walked over to me and took my hand. Can we go home now, Dad? I don't want to talk to Mom anymore today. Of course, sweetheart. As we headed for the door, Blackwood made one last desperate attempt. Mr. Holloway, if you don't agree to reasonable terms, we'll have no choice but to fight this in court. It could get very ugly, very public. I paused at the door and turned back to face them. Mr. Blackwood, I'm an architect. I've spent my entire career building things that last, solving problems that seem impossible, and creating beauty from chaos. This situation is just another construction project. What do you mean? I mean, I've already built the foundation. The evidence, the documentation, the witness statements, the financial records, it's all there, solid and unshakable. Your client's reputation is the building I'm demolishing, and I'm very good at controlled demolitions. You can't just destroy someone's life out of spite. I'm not destroying anything out of spite. I'm protecting my daughter from people who've proven they can't be trusted. Everything that's happened to your client is the direct result of her own choices. I looked at Naomi one last time. You had everything, Naomi. A family who loved you, financial security, a beautiful home, a daughter who worshipped you, and you threw it all away for what? A few exciting weekends with my brother? Some Instagram photos and the thrill of sneaking around? I was unhappy, she cried. I felt trapped, ignored. So you could have talked to me. You could have suggested counseling. You could have asked for a separation. Instead, you chose to lie, cheat, and steal. Those were your choices, and these are the consequences. Ivy squeezed my hand. Dad, I'm ready to go home. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. We left them sitting in my office, surrounded by the wreckage of their failed last stand. As we walked to the car, Ivy looked up at me with those serious dark eyes. Dad, are you sad about Mom? I considered the question carefully. I'm sad about what she chose to become. I'm sad that she hurt you, but I'm not sad that we're free of the lies. Me neither. That evening, as we sat in our living room planning our weekend dog shopping trip, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. Grant, You're not going to believe this. Naomi's attorney just called. She wants to settle immediately. Full custody to you, complete financial reimbursement, and she's dropping all her demands. What changed her mind? Apparently, having her daughter hear her blame everyone else for her own choices was a wake-up call. She realizes she has no case and no credibility left. And Trevor? Pleading guilty to the harassment charges in exchange for probation. His adventure tourism career is over, but he'll avoid jail time. I looked at Ivy, who was researching dog breeds on her tablet, her face serious with concentration. She looked happy, peaceful, safe. How long until it's final? 2 weeks for the paperwork, then it's over. Good, we're ready to move on. But even as I said it, I knew that moving on would be the hardest part. Building a new life from the ruins of the old one. Teaching my daughter to trust again. Learning to trust again myself. Still, as I watched Ivy excitedly show me pictures of golden retrievers and beagles, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: hope. The foundation was solid, the blueprints were clear. It was time to start building something new. Epilogue. New construction. 2 weeks later, the divorce was final. Naomi signed the papers without contest, relinquishing all claims to custody and agreeing to supervised visitation pending completion of counseling. She'd moved back to her hometown in Ohio, where her parents were helping her rebuild her life away from the wreckage she'd created in Denver. Trevor had disappeared entirely. Some said he'd moved to Costa Rica to start over in adventure tourism. Others claimed he was working at a ski resort in Montana under an assumed name. I didn't care enough to find out. Lila and Rick had divorced as well, their marriage another casualty of the lies and deception that had infected our social circle. The Denver social scene had moved on to newer scandals, leaving the wreckage of our former lives in the past where it belonged. On a sunny Saturday morning in March, Ivy and I drove to the animal shelter to meet a golden retriever named Max. He was 3 years old, house-trained, and had been surrendered by a family who could no longer care for him. "He's perfect, Dad," Ivy said, kneeling down as Max licked her face enthusiastically. "Can we take him home?" "I think Max has already decided that for us," I replied, watching as the dog settled protectively next to my daughter. As we filled out the adoption papers, Ivy looked up at me with a smile that reminded me why I'd fought so hard to protect her. "Dad, are you happy now?" I considered the question. My marriage was over, my brother was gone, and most of our former friends had chosen sides or simply disappeared. My daughter and I were starting over with just each other and a rescue dog who'd also lost his original family. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm happy now." And for the first time in months, I meant it completely. We drove home through the Denver streets, Max's head hanging out the window, Ivy chattering excitedly about dog toys and training schedules. Our house looked different somehow, not like the stage set for a perfect family that had never really existed, but like a real home where real people could build something authentic and lasting. That night, as I tucked Ivy into bed with Max already claimed his spot at the foot of her bed, she asked me one more question. "Dad, do you think Mom will ever be happy?" "I hope so, sweetheart, but that's something she has to figure out for herself." "I hope she does, but I'm glad we don't have to wait for her anymore." "Me too, Ivy, me too." I turned off the lights and headed downstairs to my home office, where architectural plans for a new project were spread across my drafting table. A client wanted me to design a house for a single father and his teenage son, something modern but warm, sophisticated but comfortable. A home built for honesty instead of pretense. As I worked on the preliminary sketches, I thought about foundations and load-bearing walls, about the difference between structures built to impress and structures built to last. I thought about the blueprints for the life Ivy and I were building together, one based on truth instead of lies, on genuine connection instead of social media performance, on love instead of convenience. Outside, snow began to fall again, covering Denver in a fresh blanket of white. But inside our house, it was warm and safe and real. Max was snoring softly upstairs. Ivy was sleeping peacefully in her own bed, and I was exactly where I belonged. The old blueprints had been for ruin, a marriage built on false foundations, relationships constructed from lies and deception, a family structure that couldn't withstand the weight of betrayal. But the new blueprints were for something better, something honest and strong and worth building. I picked up my pencil and got back to work.